You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves, a midwife who will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change. We are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating this space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were
Born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and I have no other host with me today. Clover is moving. Emma is on the road. Leah is in the middle of an appointment. Nina, I can't even remember. Her kids are sick or she's sick or I don't know, something's going on. So it's just me today. And with me, I have Bea, who is a doula local to our area. And I will hand it right over to her to introduce herself.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. It's so nice to be here and spending some time with you. I am a doula and a childbirth educator and a Spinning Babies parent educator and a Spinning Babies Aware Practitioner. And I've kind of been in love with birth since I was a kid. I witnessed my first birth when I was 7. I have 3 older sisters who were kind enough to let me be present at their births. And yeah, it was amazing. I was immediately hooked. It was a very medicalized birth. It was an induction. Baby was born on December 22nd, so I'll let you figure out why that happened. With a sunny side up baby, with a forceps delivery, it was a lot. Yeah, but I was really able to be present for all of it and like tucked right up under the OB's arm for the repair after baby was born, and that was it. I was hooked.
How did you leave feeling that, like from that birth? Like, did you experience any trauma from her, or you were just like, this is so wild and amazing?
I don't think I have any scary feelings about it. I remember her recovery being really intense to kind of witness, and she, had her donut that she took with her everywhere for a really, really long time. There was, looking back on it, I can see that there were definitely some things that were not ideal. And, I think I held my nephew before she did, which is sad. And now looking back on all of that and, what he was like as a kid growing up, I'm like, oh, some craniosacral therapy might have been nice for that kid who came out with this, pointed OP head. And I remember the doctor saying, put a hat on that baby before his mom sees him. And
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, it's just kind of a testament to having, are you still there? It brings up a good point of children at birth. And like, because I know a lot of families can be worried about their child's experience and feeling like it was like if they witness anything traumatic, but that like there's such innocence in children. And so that even though like us as adults could recognize that as maybe potentially traumatic, that you were able to just see the beauty in it.
Yeah, it was very magical.
That's so great. Cool. So you were hooked, and then what?
More babies, more nephews. I have many nephews. And then ultimately, let's see, I gave birth to my first baby pretty young. I was 19 and I had all of my family there with me. And that birth, looking back on it now with the lens that I have, could also have been seen as traumatic. But at the time, I just remember thinking, wow, I just fucking did this. It was huge for me. I was like, well, apparently I can do anything now. And I think that a piece of that was because of all the support that I had while I was doing that. And also because I really was able to feel like I had control over what was going on. So even though things weren't kind of going my way, I was still able to make decisions and felt like it was still my birth rather than just kind of things happening to me. Even though there was kind of some intense stuff going on. And so after that, my youngest older sister, she was there when I had my daughter. And then she soon after became pregnant with a surprise third baby. So I was there at her birth when I was 7, and then we ended up being pregnant together for
Wow.
her 3rd and my 2nd. And so I attended that birth, which was a home birth, while I was 5 months pregnant with my daughter.
Wow. So she had 2 hospital births and then a home birth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was because I started to have my first at a birth center that she was like, wow, this is so much nicer than a hospital.
So you had your first at a birth center. Got it. Okay.
No, I started at the birth center and then we ended up transferring to the hospital.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And so was her birth your first home birth?
It was.
It was.
Yeah. And it was amazing. I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me on that day when that happened was that she gave birth to her baby in her bed, and then she stood up and we peeled back the double made bed, and she like stood up, we unmade the bed, and then she got right back into her own freshly made bed. And I was like, wow,
Magic.
this is really something. And then she just got to stay there, and it was really awesome.
It's so great because that's like so simple. You know what you just described? It's not like
It wasn't hard to do.
It like makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really great. So then I had my second, and our finances at the time did not allow for a home birth or a birth center birth, since it wasn't covered by my insurance. And so I had a second hospital birth, which was fine. It was nice and easy, and it's the second baby. It was great.
So your family was with you for both?
So I had so many people at my first that by the time my second came around, I was like, I don't think I need all these people. I'll have my one sister, my youngest older sister, come. And so she came with her husband and my nephew, who was a tiny baby.
Yeah.
And they stayed in the car. It was the middle of the night. And she came up. And so she and my mom and my husband at the time were there.
Got it. Okay.
He was asleep for most of it. He like laid down in my hospital bed because I didn't want to lay. I was having a standing labor, and the nurses came in and he was asleep in the bed. We're like, oh, I don't think so. No, this isn't going to work for us.
Well, someone's got to use the bed.
Yeah, well, they brought him a pad and he laid down on the floor and slept through most of my labor, which was fine. I was in the zone, and I didn't need any of that.
Yeah. So at what point do you learn about doulas? And, obviously you have 2 little kids at the time, so I don't know where you go from there.
Yeah, so I first trained as a doula 14 years ago. So my daughter was almost a year old, my youngest.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
So they were still,
yeah, they were really little. And I did a couple of births, and it was hard with 2 little ones at home and an unsupportive partner. It wasn't going to work. And so that kind of stayed in my orbit, and, birth has always been my passion. So I've always been the one that, as my friends started having babies, they'd call and, we talk about what was going on and what their options were. And then fast forward a few years, I got divorced. My kids were older. My partner now is really supportive of what I do. And I was in another job and not happy. It's like, man, I think I want to do birth work again. And he said, go do birth work again. And so I took another doula
You're like,
training.
do you know what you're signing up for, though? Let's talk about it.
I didn't tell him that.
I think
I just said, okay.
We need to interview some like doula midwife partners to like hear their side of it all. Yeah.
Because it's a big ask on your village. It really is. And so when I re-entered birth work for the second time, I had a really stable village that made it possible. So I did my second doula training in 2016 and was just like really, really into it and continuing on with my education. I did Lamaze training in 2017 and Spinning Babies Parent Educator training in 2019, and then dynamic volume balancing last year in 21. And I'm like gathering and soaking up all the knowledge that I possibly can. And just watching all of these births unfold and trying to figure out how I can be helpful to people and keep them from having these traumatic experiences that I keep seeing over and over again. And so Spinning Babies seemed like it would be the piece that would make that possible, that if your baby's well lined up and your pelvis is balanced and your labor is uncomplicated, in air quotes, that you're not going to have any of this stuff. And it sort of had the opposite effect, because now as I'm seeing all of these really uncomplicated labors, I'm continuing to see these interventions and things that are happening to people who are just, they're just having a baby.
You're like, wait, the babies and moms weren't the problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has becoming a Spinning Babies educator changed your practice? What does it look like now?
I do a lot of spinning babies, and especially dynamic body balancing with everyone now.
Can you say what dynamic body balancing is? I'm sure a lot of people, I am not super familiar with it. I've heard it.
Yeah, so that's when you had Jen Santos on your podcast, that's what she's talking about. So dynamic body balancing was brought about by Carol Phillips, who is kind of the grandmother of spinning babies, because she created a lot of the spinning babies techniques that they are so famous for. Gail Tully is who kind of packaged it into something that you can teach to birth workers and then they can teach to parents, but this is all kind of out of Carol's brain. So it was really amazing to be able to go and learn from her directly and kind of remove the layers of birth worker telephone and get it kind of undiluted from the source. So it's the idea that our bodies are always in flux, and to kind of address what's going on in your tissues and your fascia, to be able to bring balance to your pelvis and your whole body, really. And we are all in society now, I feel like, so unbalanced by the way that we've been living. I mean, we've probably all been sitting in desks since we were 5 years old. That's not normal. Mm-hmm. So if you have a pelvis and you live in gravity, you probably could benefit from a little bit of extra support to bring balance to your body. And then that in turn, kind of once your uterus is balanced, then your baby can get into an ideal position, which sets them up to go through all of the reflexes that they need to go through as they move through the birth canal and are born. And it just really sets the wheels in motion for healthy babies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So right now you are a doula. You're also on the side, like also just teaching these techniques to families who aren't necessarily your clients.
Yeah, so I really quickly discovered how helpful Spinning Babies techniques were for my clients, and I can only take a couple clients in a month, but I'm like, everybody needs to know this.
Right.
Yeah, so I teach private Spinning Babies parent classes to people, and then I'm also doing Spinning Babies Aware Practitioner work on the side as well. So like body work for pregnant people, basically. And so what that looks like is sometimes I get referrals from other doulas with people who are having pain of some sort or are past their due date and bumping up on induction and their baby's really high or in an OP position. And I'll go and do kind of a blend of spinning babies and dynamic body balancing on them just to make sure that everything's in good shape for their birth.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend you worked on right before her baby came flying out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like raves about your time with her when she was in early labor.
Oh, that's
like
so
it made
sweet.
Such a difference.
Yeah, it's really helpful sometimes. I find that it's more not helpful. It's more immediately noticeable for people who aren't my clients because I haven't been working on them continually. It's sort of like can open the floodgates of things that they've been holding. Mm-hmm. And for my clients, I don't get that. Like, you're going to have your baby the next day. It just sort of keeps them in a good way so that whenever their baby is ready to come, they just come.
It's ready. Yeah. Nice. So where do you see your practice going? Are there any, I know you're saying like you're just soaking up all the knowledge. Are there other things like on the agenda that you're hoping to dive into more?
That's a really good question, Sophia, because I feel like there's so much that I want to know. And there's a little piece of, birth workers kind of that you got to pick a lane, Yes. So I'm really a big fan of helping people to prepare their bodies for birth, and that's worked really well for me. I would love to move more into out of hospital birth, just because I find it so wonderful and lovely. So I'm doing some midwife's assistant training, and I'd love to be able to do more of that just just because it fills my cup to be out of hospital. So I have quite a bit of experience with like birth center births, and really actually limited experience with home births. I don't know if you knew this, but I do also have experience with these sort of accidental unassisted births.
Yeah. I've been noticing that.
Yes. Yeah. So that's also been really interesting to see how well birth works if nothing is happening, you know?
Yeah.
It really works well.
It does.
Yeah.
So in reflection of your career up to this point, what has been the trickiest part? Because there are a lot of birth workers that listen, whether they're doulas or student midwives. Is there any like little bits of wisdom there that you would have done a certain stage of your career a little differently or set yourself up different? Because it's tricky to like maintain another job while you're working. And then it's also, as you're getting going, it's hard to like have enough clientele and make enough money to not hold another job. So how is that possible for you?
So I was really lucky in that I was already running my own business. I ran my own house cleaning business before I transitioned into birth work. And so I had a full schedule of clients, and then I was slowly weeding out the ones who cared when I came and keeping the ones who were like, yeah, whatever, if a baby's coming, come on Thursday, we don't care.
Yeah.
And so I was able to slowly kind of stack the deck towards birth work and kind of continue on in that fashion. So it was a really nice like ebb and flow of making sure that I had a steady income, and also being able to be flexible enough as my own boss to not keep people who needed me certain days. Because that doesn't work if you're a birth worker.
Yeah.
It has been a little tricky just in terms of having kids and what that looks like. And it's hard for me to like volunteer at the girls' school the way that I used to, because I can't commit to certain days because babies come whenever they want. And I'm basically almost always on call.
Yeah, the RSVPs are always, yes, I'll be there unless.
Yeah. So I just kind of show up when I can, and it's nice because I am home with them so much. And they also know that sometimes I just vanish for a day or two or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. What's the longest you've been gone from home?
Probably 3 days.
Was
2
that
nights.
one birth or back to back births? Yeah, one birth.
Yes, and yes, both. Yeah, I recently had 2 very back-to-back births, like placenta delivered at 4:16 in the morning, and at 4:17 in the morning, I got the first text with a picture of the contraction timer, like, it's happening.
You're like, no.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the timing was really amazing that like I didn't have to do any of the birth thinking that another one was coming. And then I was driving out of the parking lot of the hospital when the papa called and said, we're ready for you to join us. Okay, I'm on my way.
Yeah. So do you think, you mentioned that you did some like midwifery or assisting courses. Do you picture like transitioning to doing just that? Do you think you'll always do doula work? I assume you'll always offer these courses of spinning babies and dynamic body balance, because even, home birth mamas need that. Yeah. What do you have like future goals? Like when you picture your like end goal, like what would it be for you?
Yeah. That's really been something that's been kind of growing and changing. And what I see happening is kind of an ebb and flow of that work, of like midwife assisting and doula work, because I can fill in midwife assisting kind of where I'm taking gaps. And so that's been really helpful for me to be able to feel like I can I'm taking part of the summer off. And then I can just kind of pepper that with some midwife's assistant shifts. And so I can stay in birth work and, keep some money coming in, which is also always necessary, and not need to be on call every single day and night, and have that kind of dynamic with my family. My kids are getting older, and I'm starting to realize I have limited summers left with them, and I want to be able to do things and go places. And you know how it is, you got to plan these vacations at least 9 months in advance.
Or
and then
they'll
be
last minute. You're like, she gave birth early. We've got 3 days before I go back on call.
Let's go.
Actually, what I realized, because I recently was in this situation where I'm like, ooh, if she has her baby early, I'll have like a week off call. We could like jet out real quick for a little vacation. And then I realized, oh no, I can't, because the first week is full of like appointments, postpartum appointments as a midwife. So I can't even, I'm like, I really would need them to deliver, have a week of like the intense postpartum appointments, and then still be off call that second week.
Right.
So it makes that window even shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to mix some of that in does a couple of things. It helps to kind of fill my cup as a human to be present at out of hospital births, because they are so nice and it feels good. And also it can kind of take the space when I need to take a break from like the on-call lifestyle.
Yeah. Through your career, are there any like birth stories that really stand out and have stuck with you? I always ask this question because I tell a lot of stories with my families of like almost like lessons learned, but through past birth experiences and other people's experiences. Do you ever do that in your practice? Or are there ever any like birth stories that were really pivotal for your career that like shaped and shifted you? Either your birth stories personally or professionally. And it's okay if you don't have any.
You know, I'm just trying to think. Usually there's like a specific the topic that we're talking about with clients that brings up like, oh, this reminds me of this time when this happened. And so kind of as a general question, I don't know that I have an answer. I think that one thing that really struck me quite significantly was that I was at a long twin induction. You saw the twins on my little waiting picture.
Sure.
And it was several days of nothing, but then it was a day or two of, you know, definitely something. And so I was on very little sleep, and monitoring twins in the hospital is really intense. It is a lot of hands-on manipulation of what's going on. You got to make sure you have each baby. You have to make sure you're not getting each baby twice. And we spent days chasing those babies on the monitors. They were moving around, and it was like the monitors. The baby doesn't like this position. We got to, you know, the monitors. Like, I think the word the monitors came out of the nurse's mouth, you know, thousands of times in the space of those couple of days. And I finally came home, and I'd been awake for a really long time, and my kids made me raviolis and they tucked me into bed, and it was very sweet. And I was like laughing and crying, and I was a wreck. And then we hear a noise at the door, and I thought it was the dog's tail wagging. I didn't think it was barking. And they were like, no. Like, I think I'm hallucinating. And they're like, no, someone's at the door. And so I look on the Ring doorbell, and it's my neighbor. It's my neighbor's husband. And I know that his wife is very pregnant. And I'm like, oh, why are you knocking on my door at 10 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
This can't be good. And so I ran downstairs, talked to him, and apparently they needed just a little tied me over doulaing until their doula could arrive. And I ran out the door in my pajamas and barefoot and up the stairs of their house, 2 doors down, to the sound of her pushing. And I was like, oh, I think you guys need more than a doula. And I quickly realized that she was going to give birth before the paramedics arrived. And she did, to this gorgeous little baby. And that's when this baby pops out and is, delivered right there in the bathtub. And I realized in that moment that this baby had not been monitored once. And after days of like, what's going on with the baby, and we need to monitor the baby kind of being drilled into my head, I was like, oh, apparently you can have a baby with zero monitoring whatsoever.
Let's talk about that juicy topic, because what are your thoughts on that? Because you're right, it is the focus in labor. It's the focus, for better or worse. So which one is it?
Right.
Better or worse?
And that's a piece that I see being so like mixed with how birth is handled in the hospital and out of the hospital. Like, are you Dopplering every 15 minutes? Are you Dopplering at all? Is this baby just coming out? Because sometimes they do. Or are you on this continuing monitor system, and there's one dip and all of a sudden it is this like hugely emergent situation, and there are 8 people in your room and none of them are talking to you. They're talking to each other. And I really think that when these situations happen in the hospital and there is a deep D cell that they are trying to manage, there are at least 5 or 6 people in the room, and to bring to their attention that it would be helpful if one of them could be narrating what's going on to the person in labor, because they're all talking to each other and nobody's talking to her. And I'm happy to narrate it if I'm there, but doulas aren't at every birth. And it's traumatic when you do know what's going on. And so to not know what's going on is really, really scary for people. And that's just not something that I see happening at home births, or birth center births. There's this like obsession with the monitoring that's really interesting to me. And a doula friend of mine recently sent me like a study that they did on fetal heart monitoring and how accurate it is. And I'll have to find it for you so that I can send it to you. It was really interesting. And the basic kind of takeaway from it was that it's not as accurate as people think that it is. And yet that's kind of been the basis of like hospital care, is you get your baby monitored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my spiel with my families I work with is the only way we know that your baby is quote unquote okay is by monitoring their heart tones. Since they've introduced that, it has not improved outcomes for babies. We have higher C-sections, which maybe would be okay if we were like quote unquote saving more babies, but we're not actually. The C-section rate has gone up and we still have horrible outcomes for babies. So we don't know if we're deciphering heart tones correctly. Apparently not, because our rates are so bad. So the only way we know that baby's okay is one, like intuitively with the mama, like feeling like, yes, I feel like I can feel my baby move, or I feel an intuitive connection to my baby. Knowing that most babies are fine in labor. Most labors don't need anything. They don't need mom monitored. They don't need baby monitored. On rare occasions, maybe it's appropriate. And so then families just need to decide what their comfort level is. Like, does it make them feel safe to be able to hear the baby's heartbeat? Knowing that there is a risk to not listening and there's a risk to listening, because once you have the information, then you feel obligated to act on it sometimes. So we have families who want to do it standard of care every half hour, listen to the baby. We have some families that don't want us to listen at all. And, we just have them chart that against medical advice. And, it's not necessarily my medical advice, but the California Medical Board's advice.
Right.
And most families land somewhere in the middle where we say like, would you like us to listen? And they say yes sometimes, no sometimes, and we just kind of like check in as the mom wants us to. Yeah, I agree with you. And the studies show that the less we listen, the better outcomes for babies. And we have been to births where the baby's heart tones were able to tell us that they were going to have struggles when they came out. And so we could either be more prepared than we already are or decide to transfer. But most of the time, like you said, I've been to some births where we hear some D cells at the end there, and it gets everyone a little stressed out, even though we like remain calm and we're telling the mom what's going on. But then the baby comes out and they're totally fine. It's like, okay, if we hadn't been listening, the baby just would have come out and been totally fine and we wouldn't have been all stressed, But that's why I feel like it's up to the parents to make the decision of how often they want to listen, because it's their experience they have to live with forever. So
yeah, absolutely.
Say.
And that's so much of what goes into being a doula. Is this is not my birth experience. This is your birth experience. I've had my babies. This is your baby to have. And so holding that in one hand and also holding kind of, I know what's coming down the pike, and whereas you may not, because you've not been to all these hospital births like I have, and walking that line between preparing people for what they're going to experience at the hospital and not like pushing my own agenda. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or making it feel like it's scare tactics to get them, corralled in one direction. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you have
Hmm.
favorite resources for families, whether it's like documentaries or books or courses or anything like that that you find over and over again you're recommending to like get
Yeah,
them prepared?
I really like the evidence-based birth preparation. They've got like it, childbirth education classes, and if you take like the long course, which is hard to get people to do, but meeting like 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, that's what I've seen be immensely helpful in empowering people to give them all of the information and like the actual evidence-based information, not just this is how this hospital likes to do this and this is our standard of care. Like, what really are we doing and why are we doing it? And I've seen examples of that working so well for people, people whose like bag of waters is open late at night and it was a trickle and it was clear. And she was like, oh, I'm ready for this. It's a trickle and it's clear and I'm fine. And we're going to go to bed and we'll let you know if something happens during the night. And nothing did. And she woke up well rested that morning and went to the hospital and had her baby.
Mhm.
Whereas if you didn't know that and you called L&D, they'd say, come in. And then they'd keep you and you'd have an IV in your arm and you'd be trying to sleep in that hospital labor bed, which is one of the least comfortable beds that there are. And, it starts the clock and there's all of this that comes along with something that truly was not an emergent situation for her.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah, I've had somebody take that course and they said it was incredible.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And there's honestly a piece of it that I like people getting their childbirth education really from someone other than their doula. That way I can kind of remain a neutral piece of things. And that also when they're going to the hospital, they're not like, well, my doula said this and my doula told me that I didn't have to come in, because there's this whole piece of being a doula when you're in the hospital that is managing your relationship with the providers and how to be able to be an effective doula while continuing to be invited back to that hospital.
Yeah.
So much of it is like how to really quickly build rapport with the nurses. And, there's this whole, it's such a huge part of my job is how to like
It's like playing
manage.
playing games, like putting
Yes.
on the good girl persona. I've actually heard a lot of doulas complain about that, and like the feeling of somebody recently just reached out to me and they're like, more and more, I just feel like I'm holding their hand as they get abused. And there's like the line that I can't cross or I break relationships within the staff. And like that's actually the balance that I'm trying to hold too. But the hospital staff would be the California Medical Board.
Hmm.
And then my families, and like that's kind of the point of this podcast is or how it started at least, is like how can we continue to serve our families first and not put the California Medical Board in like risk of liability. For us it would be and for you it would be more about like your standing within the hospital system. Like how do we continue to put our families first and still be able to do the job that we're trying to do. And I bet that balance is very, very difficult in the hospital.
It is really tough. And I feel like it's a noticeable difference to me if it's like a staff member comes in that I've worked with before, especially several times, and they know me and it's like, whew, okay, I don't need to like posture that I'm gonna be the doula that behaves myself. I can just be the doula that supports my client and not need to try to wear both of those hats at the same time, because often you really have to. And care providers certainly have their own biases about doulas. And I know that there are doulas who come in and are doing things that they don't appreciate and that puts their license at risk. This is something that we hear from nurses is that they're right. Doulas don't have licenses that you can revoke. We can continue to go and doula, everywhere but that hospital if you actually get kicked out of it. But if you're doing something as a doula that is like making it so that there's an adverse outcome for that patient, that's on that nurse's license. And so they're scared of us sometimes.
Mhm.
And so to be able to kind of, it's hard. It's like you got to respect that system and earn their trust to be able to unplug her to go to the bathroom. It's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I know. I remember I took my last doula client. She was due 2020 in like August, I think it was. And COVID hit and all that, and doulas kind of shut down for the year. And I remember being like, okay, this is a good transition. Like, I'm not going to take in any doula clients because I was still working with that transition of some doula clients, some home birth families. And then when it got to be summer and we realized that this wasn't going away anytime soon, that last doula family decided to switch to home birth, which was very straightforward because I was a midwife. And I was like, oh, well, this is perfect because I wasn't going to be like, sorry, I don't take doula clients anymore.
Right.
But she was going to be my last stint in the hospital. And so I can't even remember the last time I went to the hospital because that in my head was going to be the last time. And yeah, I have this dream that it might not be a popular dream, but that one day all doulas are like, no, we don't go to hospitals anymore. It's dangerous there. And then all families are like, oh, okay, well, I guess where do you go then if you don't go to the hospital? It's like, no, you just stay home.
Right.
Like, unless you're actually high risk or something. And even that is negotiable. I have lots of families reach out to me thinking they might be high risk. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound high risk to me. That sounds like you're like scare tactics from your providers. Yeah, it's so tricky because the thing is, if money wasn't an issue, like, because that's where most of the doula work lies, is within the hospital. So you kind of like go that route, even though, like you were saying, your dream would be to do more home births. And I think it's because your job isn't as hard at home, like, because you can literally at home, for the most part, just support families, like labor support. You don't have to become a lawyer and an advocate as often. I'm sure maybe there are situations where doulas do have to advocate at home births, and but I feel like it takes that like charge away from it, when you're able to just support somebody at home. And of course, I'm biased.
Yeah. When you have people transfer, do you go with them or?
So I don't transfer very often. It literally has been once a year. So we'll see what unfolds this year. Every single time, it's been for a cesarean. And I have, the only time I wasn't able to go was the first year of COVID, when they weren't letting anybody,
nobody could go.
Yeah. Go. So that was the only time I wasn't able to go. But the years before and after, I have, like even last year, it was a non-emergency. Her baby was breech and she was comfortable having her baby at home, but it just like was not happening. We found out in labor that her baby is breech. And so we were like, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, let's just see what happens. And then we decided, okay, we're going to call the hospital. She decided she was ready. And she knew going in, she would have a C-section. We talked about other hospitals farther away that might might do a trial labor, or not trial labor, sorry, trivaginal birth. But she had already been trying so hard at home. She was like, I don't think this is going to happen. So we were able to call around to hospitals and say, what is your COVID policy? She really wants me to attend with her. And so Sutter was the only one who would allow me to come up in Santa Rosa. So we went there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, we haven't transported anyone else.
Yeah. Sutter's been pretty great about that and their policies. And I remember one instance when Delta was coming up, that I had a birth center client who was needing to transfer to the hospital, and she was in like early-ish active labor. What does that mean, really? And we showed up at Memorial and their policies had changed like that day. And they were like, I'm sorry, your doula can't come with you. And so I was like frantically texting all the doulas I knew to try to get Sutter's direct line. And I got it, and I called them and I was like, hey, are you guys welcoming doulas? And they were like, yes. And so we left.
Wow, that's great.
We like rolled out of there and left, and the looks on their faces was really, really special.
Yeah, good. I know Memorial, they were like, oh, you just have to be on an approved doula list. And then I tried for like 6 months to get on that list. Nobody returned my emails. Nobody returned my calls. I was like, okay, we just won't go there.
Yeah. And that's the hard piece as a doula too, because I've got to make sure that I'm on every list everywhere, because you never know what's going to happen and who's going to need to like emergently go somewhere else, and to try to make sure that you can be wherever it is that you're needed.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it was so great to chat with you. Are there any last things that you can think of that we didn't touch on? I know we talked a little bit about your births, but did you want to go into any more detail about your birth stories or things you learned from those experiences?
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about my first birth. Since it was a transfer. And I think that's something that's on a lot of people's minds when they're considering an out of hospital birth, is what happens if there's a transfer. And so I was 19. I started at the birth center. My daughter was late. She finally ended up arriving at 42 and 2, which is not something that, that would have like already risked me out of a birth center birth today, but 17 years ago you could make that happen. And I just wasn't going to rush her, and so we waited, and they were going to kind of start some home induction things with me on Saturday, and my water ended up breaking. No, not my water, my contraction started on Friday night, and my ex-husband was like, maybe this is another false alarm, because I'd have several. And I was like, I'm 42 weeks in 2 days or in 1 day. I don't think it's a false alarm. This is really happening. And so we went up to the birth center, and it was lovely. I had back labor, which was really unfortunate and really intense, and really a big piece of like why I started doing Spinning Babies, because if I can save people in air quotes from back labor and help them get their babies in a better position, the difference is huge. But I was having a lot of back labor, and I needed to be in the water. That was like my saving grace. And I was in the birth tub for several hours. And then as things were kind of progressing and I was getting closer, I was 9 centimeters, and they were concerned because my bag of waters had not yet opened, and they were concerned about meconium in the waters. And so they did ask me if they could rupture my waters to check, since I was so close. And I said yes. And it was full of meconium.
It's so funny because, like, why wouldn't it be?
Right. I know. Yeah. I know. Shocker, it was. So that's when we transferred, just in the midwife's car, not an emergency. I mean, I was fully dilated at that point, so it wasn't my favorite car ride. But we showed up, right as the sun was rising at the hospital. It was really beautiful, and went upstairs, and I got to start pushing. And I pushed for a long time. I pushed for like 3.5, 4 hours, unmedicated, which I think is the thing that was able to like make that birth happen, was the fact that I could move around and I could try different positions and push unmedicated, and ultimately ended up needing several interventions. I needed a vacuum assist, and I received the only episiotomy that I've ever seen. I haven't seen an episiotomy. I got one, but I've never witnessed that. And I remember being involved in the discussion as to whether or not that was going to happen, and having that like question asked of me, and having it offered and suggested, as opposed to snip or like, we're going to do this, you need this, was such a huge empowering thing. I mean, it certainly wasn't fun, but it made me feel like I was in control of the situation to be able to do that. And so then my daughter did end up needing some extra help, as they called it. And so the cord was clamped quicker than I would have liked and cut, and she was taken to the warmer and some suctioning done. And so it seemed at the time like that was what needed to happen. And so, I got her back and everything, and that it was great. And so it kind of lived in my mind as like, oh, I was really supposed to be at the hospital, and maybe I was, but now with all of the information that I have now, to be able to think about what was going on, and the fact that like there was meconium in the water, not because she was in distress, but because she was an old lady baby, and had naturally, moved some of her bowels, and that resuscitation can be done with the cord attached. You don't need to remove the baby from the mama to do that.
Mhm.
And that you can also, you don't need a fancy machine to suction. You can use a doula.
Mhm.
All of these things kind of played a part in what was going on. And so I have kind of a couple of takeaways from that. My first takeaway is that being able to labor in the coziness of the birth center without an IV and with all of my family there that I wanted and in the water was what made me able to make it all the way to pushing without an epidural. And I feel like if I had given birth to that baby in a hospital, I would have gotten an epidural, and I do not believe I would have been able to push her out by myself. So that would have been the first cesarean. Then, as you know, it's a struggle to be able to attempt a VBAC. And so I could have had 2 cesareans. And so the transfer itself wasn't that bad. I had this like really long, really nice, well-supported labor at the birth center. And then we moved to the hospital. And then the other piece of it that I see now is that like maybe the transfer wasn't even necessary. Maybe we could have just stayed there and pushed out the baby. And if she needed suction her and give her back. And this whole, like the hospital's whole idea that you need to separate the mother baby dyad in order to resuscitate the baby, I think is just bananas. And I don't understand why we're still doing it.
I heard a story that I do not know is true or not, that as soon as the midwife or doctor cuts the cord and hands the baby over, the baby's no longer their responsibility. And that has always been a factor in getting the baby out of their hands sooner than later, because then it's, whoever is the nurse's responsibility.
Right, is in charge. Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I see these like rapid cuts happen in babies that look, I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but I see a lot of like 30-second old babies and they look okay. Like you could just give them a minute to kind of land in their bodies, like literally a minute, not, extended, but you could just wait and evaluate. And I see these babies like rushed off to the warmer. And there's a piece of me that almost wants to give birth at a hospital just to like show them what's possible. Like, I'm going to shut the door. You guys aren't going to touch me.
I did that and I had a cesarean.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
I'll
second
let
baby,
you know when I want more help.
I felt so cocky walking in there with my 2 midwives, and like I was gonna show them what a physiological birth looked like, and I had a C-section. I was like, what just happened? Yeah, it's hard to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think now like
it's so smooth, straightforward, doesn't take long, like unless you have that birth, if there's any little hiccups, like you just lean way more towards C-section.
Right. Yeah. But why resuscitations aren't done while baby is still attached just physiologically does not make sense.
Right. That last birth we had where we breathed for the baby for 8 minutes, the cord was attached the entire time.
I saw.
Minor placenta inside her.
Right.
Yeah. It's totally possible. Yeah. And I think in Europe they have like whatever their thing is in the hospital, their bedside table is able to be like wheeled to the bed and lowered and raised, and like so they can perform procedures on babies at the bedside. Yeah.
That sounds ideal.
Well, what about your second? You said
so my second,
and it was fine, but that's all you gave us.
It was, I think that something that I've noticed is that if people have births that are fine, they're not needing to continue to like talk about them and process them, because it was like, yeah, I went in and I had a baby, not I need to tell you what happened. And as I continue, like I'm still unpacking my daughter's birth, and she'll be 17 this year. And then with my youngest, it was not back labor. And I would only have contractions when I was standing, and when I would sit or lay, they would stop. And so I'd labor for a while, and then I would take a break and sit down for 15 minutes.
You can turn it on and off. That's amazing. That's everyone's dream. Like, I'll just break and come back to this in a minute.
was really great. At one point I went and I laid down in the bed and I fell asleep for like 12 minutes. And the nurse came in and was like, "So we've noticed that you haven't had any contractions." And I was like, "I know, it's been great. Leave me alone."
You're like, I turned it off. Go away.
Yeah, I'm taking a break. So then I had a family practice doc who actually used to have delivery privileges at the birth center like years before that. And she was lovely. And she also asked if I would like my bag of waters opened, and I didn't know enough. I really now wish I could have waited, because I feel like both of those kids could have been born in call, since we waited to open their waters until 9 centimeters. And then immediately she came down quite a bit, and I had the most intense contraction of my life. I still remember that one specific contraction right after they ruptured my waters. And then it was time to push the baby out. And so my ex-husband, thinking it was going to be like the first time and is going to take 4 hours, gets up out of his floor bed and was like, "Okay, I'm going to go make some calls," and walks out. And I'm like moving this baby forward, and the nurses are like, "Somebody go grab him, he's going to miss it." And like 4 minutes later, I'm holding my baby.
Wow. So was he in the room?
He was in the room.
He was. They got him. Okay.
Yeah. They like grabbed him by the shirt at the elevators and dragged him back in.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That reminds me, I was a doula at a birth, and the dad was like in the bathroom washing his hands, and I opened the bathroom. I was like, "You need to come now. You're gonna miss it." He was like, "I just had to pee." I was like, "No, no time for pee."
Yeah. So to go from pushing for 3.5 to 4 hours to pushing for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 contractions was a huge difference. And just felt so different in my body. To have had that kind of like labor and pushing for that long it's really hard work.
Yeah. Did you tear along where you were cut?
So when I had my episiotomy, and then I tore in several other places, so it was quite the repair that I needed. And I had like a little kind of a blister tear, they called it, when I had my second, that didn't require any stitches, just a little. Yep. Yeah. It was lovely. And I walked out of the delivery room.
Nice.
I always say that like I could give birth to that kid any day of the week. It was not a big deal.
That's great. That's great. We just had a first time mom kind of say something similar. She's like, "That was totally manageable." She's like, yeah. She's like, "I thought it was gonna be a lot harder." I was like,
that's really how it can be. Like if there are not outside factors making you feel uncomfortable, if you are feeling like safe and loved and hydrated and, you know, with your people around you that you want and able to move how feels good to you, birth can be manageable. That's why we're all here after all of these years.
Yeah. Yeah. I am picturing a first time mom with back labor who is thinking that that's not true, because if you have back labor, it really does change the game for some.
It does.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was so great to connect with you. And a couple last questions. If your belly button had a superpower and you pressed it, anything could happen, what would happen?
Okay, so I've been listening to your podcast, and I've been knowing that these questions are coming and thinking about them and thinking about what like amazing response I'm going to build to this. And I keep coming back to the same thing, which is I would like that belly button to make dinner.
Oh my God, I didn't feel that. Just like, yeah.
That's it. Just make dinner whenever I push it. For whoever needs dinner, we're just going to make dinner.
That's the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I love food and I hate cooking.
Yep, me too.
That's great. Okay, next question. If you could go back and talk to your teenage self, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to not settle for what she knows isn't right. I think I settled a lot for stuff that was just kind of happening, and yeah, don't settle. Mm-hmm. You deserve love, and you deserve to go out and chase your dreams and to do all of that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And we have a new question. If you could have one wish for birth and like the future of birth, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good question.
And you didn't have time to do your homework on it.
Yeah, I know. I think that birth really works well. There's a reason why it's all set up. It's a beautiful system. And I think that if we as a society could get back to recognizing that birth works, that would be immensely helpful to everyone, improve our outcomes, improve our babies' lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh, well, thank you again. And I see you here and there around the community. So I'll see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us at Born Wild Podcast on Instagram. For inquiries or feedback, you can email us at bornwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me, Emma Ray, on Instagram at Emma Ray, REA.
Sophia at sophiabirth.com.
And me, Leah, at Bay Area Home Birth.
We would really appreciate it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps us reach more people. And as always,
Stay wild.